This is still a breakfast on Saturday morning on TVC. Now, experts increasingly are advocating intergenerational leadership as a critical pathway to sustainable national development, arguing that deliberate collaboration between older and younger leaders could help address long-standing governance challenges. They describe the idea as a passing of the torch, not a sudden replacement of experience, but a structured transfer of knowledge, responsibility, and influence. Some also say the lack of effective mentorship and succession planning has contributed to leadership gaps across sectors, slowing policy continuity and weakening long-term development planning. Now, joining us in our Abuja studio for this conversation is leadership and business coach, Idorain Enang. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's nice to have you, sir. Now, you're really smiling as if you are happy that we're going to finally discuss something like this today. All right. First question I would like to ask you, sir, is: are we having leadership crisis in Nigeria? And do you think it's because we are not mentoring the younger generation to be very effective and astute leaders?
Absolutely. I think, without any shadow of doubt, we do have a leadership crisis. And the reality is that if you look across sectors, there isn't that deliberate, you said it, those words were very, very well farmed out. There isn't a deliberate, structured, and empathetic mode of transition. And this really helps when, the older generation would be allowed to, create a pathway for the younger ones. And that's the only way you can have sustainable national development. And it cuts across, all the sectors, whether public or private sector. And it sits on two major pillars that you would have understanding for. And one is stability and the other innovation. And that's really where I think that gap, we're not able to bridge that gap.
Okay, sir. Nice speaking with you this morning, sir. So I think for me, I just want to understand from your point of view, when we talk about intergenerational leadership, what exactly does it look like? And how, if applied to Nigeria, what should we be seeing?
Thank you very much. The way to picture it, and I said, it sits on two pillars, one that has to do with stability and the other innovation. And when you talk about stability, it's about preserving institutional memory. You can't get that from the young. It's the older generation that will hold the blueprint of history. And with that, they are able to activate what I call institutional mechanics. And those mechanics bring some context to a lot of work, and then begins to, infuse the essence into the younger ones, who we always call the leaders of tomorrow. But in reality, we don't hand over, in the appropriate manner. Now, the other part of it is, as you bring that to a reasonable fusion, there's an injection of what I call disruptive innovation. And this is where the younger generation naturally, they possess their agility, they come in with, technological fluency, they bring in that gut and grit and what you would call contemporary worldview. They're not localized, they're not held bound by baggage or things that they just want to flow. Now, when they are given the platform, they tend to accelerate. And when they accelerate development, they tend to modernize obsolete systems. So, more or less, the way to bring that together is to drive a certain policy continuity, and it starts really from, the basics, and that's what I mean by, getting it into full gear.
I love the fact that you brought in the issue of policy continuity in this discussion. But quick one, let me quote John Maxwell. It says, "If you think you are leading and no one is following, then you are taking a walk."
Yeah, so
At what point can we bring this policy continuity by leading by example?
Okay, the first port of call is the family. I mean, every family is the bedrock of the nation. Families make up the nation. Now, there must be something that truly creates that DNA. You know, I got, it's a privilege. I come from Akwa Ibom, and my parents were civil servants, notwithstanding the values, the character, the way and manner, you know, they will tell you these are the things we don't do in our family. And these are the things that, you know, will shape you. So in terms of policy integration and bedding it starts really from the family, where you have what I call a positive DNA. And it's from there as a child begins to go through the transitions. That transitioning begins to put you into different cadres and spaces. So as you move in, you go through education. Education itself creates the opportunity for several policies that have been enacted to protect the integrity of knowledge, and that transits up to the point where you're now talking about, okay, now we want to get into the national space. At that point, it is expected that when leadership transitions are viewed as a relay race, you know, that's what I'm trying to, you know, kind of draw for you, rather than a wrestling match. National development plans then will survive the changes in any administration or transition, because it's almost like, you know, you're passing the baton all the way through from the point in time which I talked about, the bedrock, which is family. So long term, we need to start from somewhere, and that somewhere is where you and I, you know, emanate from. And then all the way, you know, it goes all the way to the very, very top.
Now, there's passing the torch. I would like us to talk about it, and let us look at it from this perspective. A lot of people believe that the younger are careless, you know, and will not make very good leaders because of their spontaneous side. Do you agree with that? Is that one of the problems we are having in mentoring younger people for leadership?
I absolutely disagree with it totally, in every respect. People that come up with such notions clearly are not built to build. They are not built to build leaders. They are more or less, in most cases, they can be very insecure. From my personal viewpoint, and I'll tell you, I've had the rare privilege of 3.5 decades, you know, working as a corporate executive and growing through the ranks. I can tell you that at every point in time, across the spectrum, you know, passing the torch for me was never an issue. And whether you talk about workplace, whether it's within the faith, whether it's within professional associations, it has happened for me in real time. And this is not a place, I'm not trying to, you know, raise some flags. So I would violently, quote unquote, disagree with that notion, because that is what we use in perpetrating ourselves in place. Passing the torch cannot be accidental. It must be an intentional strategy. And it really, you know, sits within the ambits of working effectively. And so what do I mean? Number one, intentional mentorship and apprenticeship. That is what it means. The succession or true succession is not a single event. It's not something you just, boom, you jump into. It's not like an election or a retirement party at all. It is a process. And that process requires structured ecosystems that will make it work, where seasoned leaders, you know, will actively coach emerging talent. The second thing is where I talk about, and that probably speaks to the point you made, which is about mutual respect and generational empathy. When that is lacking, then you have that problem. The seniors must trust the competence, the capacity, and the intent of the youth. There's something about intent. You look at two eyes, intent and impact. They must view them as partners and not as threats. So when they start viewing them as threats, then there's an issue. So that generational empathy must also go to the youth, who must honor the experience and institutional knowledge of the elders. And that will only come when they recognize that there is a zero without context. If it's not there, then it leads to chaos. So you now find two warring partners. This one saying, no, these guys are this other one saying they are not. But I'll close by saying that we need institutional succession frameworks that would help us, coming from a good heart. Relying on good intentions isn't enough. Good intentions is about just speaking to the wind. We must have formal pathways, and you would deliberately see it. I mean, just look at political scene, and you'll just see, oh, there's a youth wing in every political setup. But ask me, so how many of them come out? How many of them are entrusted with that competence that they carry? How many of them are given an opportunity to understudy and see what public governance is by instituting and building the corporate structure and then embedding civil society? At the end, that mandate now becomes more of inclusion. And there's a clear exit strategy for everyone. So as you move on, you know there's a point of exit. It's almost like being on a freeway. You'll find exit 1, exit 2. That leads you to another pathway. But if you don't have anything to do, you'll just sit tight. And you'll begin to call the young ones, they are not ready. When will they be ready?
Okay,
the younger ones will say, this, you know?
Yes. Okay, so I hear you loud and clear, and I like that you said, we continue to say that the young ones are not ready. However, in July of 1966, we actually saw Nigeria witness the youngest head of state, that was Yakubu Gowon, right? And he took over power at the age of 31. So to be very honest, young people being in power is not necessarily alien to the Nigerian political system. So we've seen that. But over the years, of course, different transitions have happened, right? And it just seems like the people that have been in power want to stay in power. So it is not foreign. So at the end of the day, we look at the histories. We cannot say the issue is the young people. But then again, from your experience, of course you were aware in those times. And now also congratulations as you turn 60. And this initiative is very important to everything that is happening. So what do you have to say is the reason why it has been the way it is, or it is the way it is right about now? Of course, frameworks should need to be put in place to actually make this more intentional. But then again, we've seen young leadership, we've seen impact, we've seen growth. But then again, the handover just seems to be a problem. Why?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the very warm compliments. Let me start by saying that you can't compare apples with oranges. When General Gowon became head of state at 31, he was a military man. We are talking about a different dispensation. And at that time, it was the rule of might, not necessarily about the rule of law. Now, so we are sitting in two different dispensations. If we are serious about it, and by the way, because when you mentioned 1966, I said to myself, oh, that was my year of birth, so you must really be, I must come and check very well how clairvoyant you are to know that I'm turning 60 next week by the grace of God. Thank you. So the big question is, why is it difficult to execute this over time in Nigeria? Number one, I think there's a gatekeeper complex, an entrenchment. And this comes because in many sectors of our Nigerian society, position and power, they are often viewed as personal estates, not, what you can call, not transgenerational pots of knowledge where I need to come do something and then transfer. It is not seen as a means of, but rather it's seen as a means of economic survival rather than stewardship. So the big word there is stewardship. And when stewardship is lacking within that whole space, then everything goes out. A lack of robust social safety. That is one thing everybody needs, some form of safety. And the safety nets come when the older leaders, the older ones, cling to power indefinitely. Then what do you expect the young ones to do? So how are we going to get out of it? The way we're going to get out of it is to begin to systematically, say what we do and do what we say. And it starts from the individual, regardless of what you say. For me, God has been so good, so gracious. And I also think that I've also sat under very purposeful men who are generational in their thinking, who understand that they need to give, that they don't need to always take. But when that gatekeeper complex comes, there's a big problem. So we need to eradicate it. And I think in eradicating it, and I say this with every sense of humility, I find that many leaders, when they get up there, because it's all about position and title, they don't believe they are trainable. They don't think that they need to go for training. They don't believe that they need coaching. And they just go loose. They become loose cannons. Why? Because they are treading on what they think is right. And nobody will like to say, sir, that is not the right path, because we've put in a culture of sycophancy. Whether what you're saying is going to cause impotent disaster, or they'll say, oh, everybody's going to say, yes, you are. Yes, you are. And that's really a place to be worried about. The second thing is a culture that I'll call distortions of respect. And that is prevalent. The Nigerian culture places a massive premium on age and hierarchy, culturally. Now, you might look at it and say to yourself, this can distort within a professional or political space, because healthy pushback will not be allowed. I mean, I used to say to my colleagues when I was in corporate, I'll say to them, listen, guys, feel free to push back. That I'm the MD or the commercial director or the whatever title it was I was carrying or office, I say, feel free to push back. Let us have healthy conversations. Let's milk this cow called knowledge. It calls for critical thinking. And the handshake will only happen when we cross swords between the old and the new. And when I'm talking about old and new, I'm not talking age. I'm just talking from a generational standpoint, and trying to bridge that gap.
Okay. Wow. From what we've discussed so far, this is something that every leader in Nigeria, every office occupier in Nigeria should learn. And that means that you that is carrying the torch, you have a lot of work to do, and you have a lot of money to spend too. It's just so nice to have you on set today. Thanks for your time, and thanks for the knowledge that you have passed on to us concerning this passing the torch. And happy birthday in advance.
Thank you very much, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you, folks. God bless you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Still ahead on TVC Breakfast Saturday, with the APC state primaries settled, attention now turns to the political implication of emerging candidates and also the presidential primary holding today. Stay with us.